Joining me live is Dr. Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst for the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thanks so much for joining us. Firstly, how do you think this is going to impact us on a broader geopolitical stance?
Look, I think that it's clear that ISIS carried out this attack. There was some discussion earlier this morning in terms of, was it a false flag or was it something like ISIS? It's clear now it's ISIS. So it's a question of how Putin then exploits this geopolitically. I think that the Russians are determined to expand their offensive going into Ukraine, but they'll need extra boots on the ground, extra manpower to achieve a breakthrough of the Ukrainian lines. So this attack would give Putin, I think, some justification to bring about a general mobilization that would then allow him to do another major call-up of personnel to basically send more people to fight in Ukraine. I think that's going to be the key issue coming out of this particular tragic incident.
Reuters has described this as a dramatic escalation. Would you agree?
It's an escalation in the sense that clearly it's another attack on Russia. This time it would appear by Islamic State. They have roots in areas of Dagestan and Chechnya, where Russia has fought those groups before. So it may be that it places increasing pressure on Putin to respond directly in those areas. But I think the key issue coming out of this crisis or this incident is how Putin uses this to justify that call up so that he can then go on the offensive in Ukraine probably in the summer. At the moment, the Russian forces are advancing slowly but steadily. They're trying to find weak points in the Ukrainian defensive lines. At the same time, Ukraine's defenses are starting to fall apart because of a lack of Western support in terms of weapons coming in. If the Russians then use this attack as a justification for a call up and bring more forces into the field, that will make an offensive going into the summer against key Ukrainian cities much easier for the Russians.
What has the reaction been from world leaders?
I think you've seen understandable shock and horror at this. I mean, 60 plus people have been killed, large numbers have been wounded. Any terrorist attack, wherever it occurs, is horrible. And so you've seen international responses, obviously expressing outrage. But it's a difficult situation because Putin is not like a regular world leader. He's the leader of a country, and he's the one instigating illegal and unacceptable aggression against a neighbour for the purposes of territorial expansion. So it puts the international community into a difficult situation in terms of they can't express sympathy to Putin, but they can express sympathy to the Russian people.
We just heard in the package earlier the number of attackers is not clear. What more do we know regarding the attackers?
I think it's very clear that they came in just carrying small arms. So, assault rifles like AK-47s. Probably they had grenades as well. We talked about explosions. There were some indications they had some sort of explosive capabilities. And clearly the fact that the concert hall's roof caught on fire suggests they had those sorts of explosive capabilities. But they were a typical Islamic State type operation in the sense of a small number of attackers coming in without warning, armed with small arms, designed, and their goal was to inflict as many casualties as possible, as quickly as possible.
And finally, what will you be watching closely for in the short term?
I think my focus is on how Putin will use this to justify a mobilization of manpower that then can be thrown into the fight in Ukraine, because that's the key issue here. The key issue is how do we ensure that Russia is defeated in Ukraine? If Western military aid is beginning to falter, as is clearly the case with the US Congress now putting off any vote on military aid going to Ukraine, then I think that the real risk is that as we go into the northern spring and summer, the Russians will break through the Ukrainian defenses and then launch an offensive that could capture key areas such as Kharkiv and Kherson in the south, and that would then put real pressure on the government in Kyiv. So it's a case of how does Putin use this latest incident to justify an expansion and intensification of the war in Ukraine?